to my Father. He knows us, sees us, understands us. And then as gently and as quickly as he had picked up the bug, he placed it down on the earth. The men looked at one another, and one of them began to laugh and said, "Master, tell me your dreams and what you want." Jesus smiled once again and replied, "I wish there were peace among all peoples, that they would see wisdom in one another and would love one another, that they would understand all are equal in my Father's eye, that a child is a beautiful gift, that a woman is to be respected and honored, and that she in turn must honor and respect others, that the father, brother, and child are special, and that she wishes to make their life enjoyable, that she takes pride in her baking and cooking, that the men who toil in the fields take pride when they carry wheat or pick fruit, that the merchant is pleased." And a sadness seemed to come over him like a sudden rainstorm. A tear slowly trickled from his eye, and he said, "My wish is that when our time comes, we will all return to the Father's loving home, that his arms will be open to welcome us. But until that time, I wish for peace upon earth. Peace, peace, peace." Our guest writes in the introduction to her latest book titled "Hopeful Lament, Tending Our Grief Through Spiritual Practices." One August afternoon, my mother-in-law accidentally set our house on fire. The temperature was over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, and there was a drought. The fire hydrant near our home turned out to be broken, which made it necessary to connect with one another much farther away. That ruined any chance of saving our home. Recovering and rebuilding after that loss and countless other heartbreaks over more than a decade, I have learned to lament. I don't believe anyone just wakes up one day with some inescapable wish to grieve. People don't study it because of its intrinsic interest. We don't want to engage it experientially because of its natural concern and appeal. It's the kind of thing that most of us, me included, resist. Lament tends to be a last resort because it involves pain and loss and unanswerable questions. We turn to lament when life demands it, when there is nothing else to do but sprinkle dust in our hair, rip off and maybe tear up garments of normalcy or celebration, and let our tears fall. If you are reading these words, you or someone you care about might be grieving something profound. My hope is that this book can be a companion as you heal and discover the life you're invited to within that grief and on the other side of what has been lost. My encouragement is to take it all slowly. Be gentle with yourself as you enter vulnerable places. Invite a few close friends and family into what you're learning and experiencing. You might find it helpful, even necessary, to include a trustworthy therapist or spiritual director into the process with you. Most of all, I pray you'll feel the freedom to invite the presence of the one who draws near to the brokenhearted into your presence. The author of these words and of the book titled Hopeful Lament is Tara McDaniel. She is a spiritual director for adults and children. She has spent 2 decades with I just lost my place here. I'm making sure I was hitting the right button. And earned her Master of Divinity at Portland Seminary. McDaniel wrote More Than Ordinary with Doug Sherman and is a regular contributor to companion Companioning Center blog and is a regular contributor to the Companioning, I'll get that right, Center blog. She lives with her husband in Austin, Texas, with her twin grandchildren nearby. Tanya McDaniel, welcome to Amplify.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Let's begin with the title of the book, Hopeful Lament. What is lament? I know it can be both a noun and a verb. How does it relate to what I just read from the introduction to your book? And it's interesting that I got a note from a woman yesterday who listens to the program, and she wanted to know if sometime in the future I would have someone on the topic of life after death and dealing with our loss of a loved one. She writes about how our family lost 2 sons to cancer. Our oldest one at 3 years old, 52 years ago. Then our youngest, 18 months ago, 45 years old. And she talks about how we deal with our loss one day at a time. And you were very busy, but I need a short note and would be much appreciated. So she was hoping I was going to do this program, and here it is. It was already scheduled, and I couldn't get to her because I didn't have a phone number. I have an address. She even sent a self-addressed envelope so that I could get back to her. So I hope she's out there, but if not, I'll make sure that she gets your book. So as I began to say, what is a lament? How does it relate to what I just read from the introduction to your book? How does it relate to the woman that wrote to me? How does it relate to me? I had my best friend die a little over a year ago, my sister 2 years ago. We have much to learn from you, but let's just start with what do we mean by lament? Because it's a word we don't use anymore, it seems.
That's right. It's not a word that it's one that's kind of disappeared over many years, and it's one that I'm convinced that we're invited to re-engage, to learn it the first time if we're unfamiliar. And I think about lament as it can be simply the emotion of grief, but the way I intend it primarily in this book, it's an action word.
Yes.
So lament is taking sadness and grief and questions and losses like the one that your longtime listener sent in about the losses of her children, one that was more recent and one that happened many, many years ago. The ways that losses can stay with us. It's not just a week or a year or even several years after some significant losses anyway, that they need to come into the light. And so lament is bringing sorrow. It's bringing sadness out into the light so it doesn't stay stuck inside of us. And it is, in the best sense, it's letting grief become an action and even a conversation with God, saying, God, here is this loss. And in that sense, lament can be and often is a prayer.
And your book is so beautiful. Here's one sentence I've underlined. Some of us are living with a kind of heartache that is difficult even to whisper out loud. So that's perhaps the kind of thing that she is doing. But tell us as we get into the book now a little bit about how you've structured each of the chapters.
Yeah, so my hope, so I'll say at the outset that I wrote what I wish I had
Yes.
in the days and weeks after the fire and after other losses that I talk about in the book and elsewhere, and And so it's, in that sense, I hope it will be very practical and permission giving for people. But the structure is each chapter begins with a personal story from my life or from the lives of those I have, friends and family, or those that I host in spiritual direction. And then I get more practically into kind of the why and how of lament. And then each chapter ends with some practices to engage. So, and they're all very simple. They're all embodied. They are all meaning they engage the senses and kind of get us out of simply staying in our head or only staying with our heart, but kind of more a whole person kind of idea. And every chapter includes one of those practices includes something that is family, community, or child friendly, because the children among us are not exempt from grieving the kind of things that we're talking about.
Right. It's you describe it as a thoughtful and timely means of addressing grief. That most of us know what grief is. And like you, most of us have had a heavy heart for loved ones carrying extraordinary weights of loss and grief. So why is lament essential, and what is its relationship to grief?
Yeah. Lament is essential because there's pain in the world. Because we know this. If you were listening before, you heard the news. We know the headlines. We know we've lived through a pandemic. We know we live in a broken world. And so lament is essential because pain exists. And lament is something that takes our grief from this thing that weighs us down and that makes it impossible to see hope, makes it impossible to move forward in healthy, holistic ways, right? And it invites it into something that can be spoken in community. It can be shared, and therefore the burden is shared among others. And lament is essential because it's part of telling the truth and telling God that truth, right? So we don't only stay in praise. We don't only stay in joy. I wish that were true. I think that a day is coming when that will be true. But because we're not yet there, lament is part of the fabric of our being in the world, authentically, and it's part of the fabric of engaging with God, with our sense of the holy, with our sense of the divine.
Yeah, you're right about we seem to suffer from a steady diet of disasters these days, made even worse by hate, violence, racism, fear, and division, and we have to discover what many of us have lost. Is lament something that comes natural, or is it something we might have to learn?
I think that it's something that most of us have to learn. A caveat, those among more marginalized communities, those that are living in other parts of the world in war zones, I don't think they have to learn to lament anymore. I think they have hard-won lessons that are unavoidable. But I think most of us have to learn how to lament. And in recent history, in our time, particularly in this country, that has a lot to do with a very intentional unlearning that happened over years, and it has to do with an emphasis on the power of positive thinking. It has to do with sort of magical thinking about grief as self-fulfilling or something like that. and a host of other things. But I also think it has to be learned. I think that's part of the human condition. We, in the sense that there's something in us that knows that we're made for joy and love and life. And there's something in us that sort of chafes against this idea of staying with pain and processing it more faithfully, praying it through more faithfully. And here I think of, Job's friends as, yes, one of the most ancient examples that, that exists in the scriptures. And it's full of, his friends avoiding pain and trying to explain it away as, as judgment or all these other explanations. And so I think it's something that we must learn to do. And I think we, in this day and time, particularly in the West, have kind of two barriers to learning that we have to overcome. But it's essential that we overcome those barriers because refusing to engage our grief in these ways only compounds and extends suffering, for us and for other people.
Does our lifestyle have anything to do with it? Has it become harder to grieve?
I think that's true. A couple of things come to mind when I think about lifestyle. One is that it's so easy to avoid. It's so easy to numb and, scroll on our phones or stream the next show on our whatever show we're watching or movie we're watching. So it's easy to avoid pain. And in some ways, I would say it's understandable that we want to, because, I just said it's so easy to numb, and it is. And simultaneously, we're kind of bombarded with these constant sources of bad news that make it hard to know where to focus our attention beyond our own, beyond and in addition to our own personal struggles.
Yes, we're going to take a break in just about 20 minutes. So when we come back, you brought up Job. You refer to Job as a book of poetry that describes the life of a righteous man and his experience of suffering and loss. What those of us reading the story know that Job's friends did not is that Job himself was innocent and that he also refused to blame God. We're going to take this break.
The people you know, the news you trust. Real Pittsburgh News Radio KDKA.
I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. Last year, over 3 million people called Morgan & Morgan in their time of need. And with over 1 million of those calls coming from previous clients, friends, and family.
My name is Rita Fowler. I was in the car actually relaxing. I was talking to my sister, and all of a sudden, boom, the car hit us. I wound up actually having a stroke. And that's when I decided to call Morgan & Morgan. The whole operation, everything they did from day one, it was self-explanatory. It was text messages. It was emails. It was a no-brainer. When you think that hiring a lawyer is hard, you haven't called Morgan & Morgan.
Thank you for trusting us. We've become the largest injury firm in the world because we've won a lot. The word is out. Size matters. Reputation matters. We're America's largest injury law firm for a reason. With over 900 dedicated attorneys and climbing, we're ready wherever you are, whatever you need. The choice is easy. We're just a phone call away. Injured? Visit forthepeople.com for an office near you.
Wilson's Pharmacy is happy to announce a new low-cost generic drug plan. Wilson's Pharmacy is now offering a low-cost cash option on all prescriptions for generic drugs. Call them for a price on your generic prescription today at 412-621-6471. Again, Wilson's Pharmacy is now offering a low-cost cash option on all prescriptions for generic drugs. Learn more today. Wilson's Pharmacy, family-owned and operated for over 80 years. Reach them at 412-621-6471 or wilsonspharmacy.org.
Nothing says I love you like romantic, timeless jewelry. Even better when you can save an extra 20%. Right now at Diamonds Direct, all fashion favorite jewelry is 20% off. That's earrings, bracelets, pendants, bands, colored gemstone jewelry. Get 20% off Diamonds Direct's already unbeatable prices. Special financing, too. Get her something she can enjoy and appreciate for years to come. A fashion favorite from Diamonds Direct. Shop in-store or online at diamondsdirect.com. Diamonds Direct. Your love, our passion.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm.
This story is called The Ugly Truth About Timeshare. If you think you've done your family a favor by buying a timeshare, you need my help. Hello, I'm Chuck McDowell, founder of Wesley Financial Group. 10 years ago, I started helping folks cancel their timeshare. In the process, started what's now called the timeshare cancellation industry. The ugly truth is when you buy a timeshare, you can't tell me how much it's going to cost or when it's going to end. I recently helped a couple that had their maintenance fees go from $800 to $3,200 a year. They also received a $4,000 assessment for a hurricane that was over 1,000 miles away. Sound crazy? The crazy thing is this never ends. Call my office now. If we take you as a client, I guarantee we'll cancel your timeshare or you'll pay nothing.
Call for your free information kit. Call 800-329-2121. That's 800-329-2121. 800-329-2121.
Hard work, dedication, and dreams. These are the keystones of success. But easily filing your taxes with TurboTax and Credit Karma doesn't hurt either. And getting your max refund guarantee definitely doesn't hurt. But let others think you did a lot of hard work to file your taxes when in reality, it was a walk in the park. No, you literally filed while walking your dog in the park. Winner! Because some key info is pre-filled for you so you can file quickly and confidently like the boss that you are. So give yourself the peace of mind that comes with getting expert help because you're going places. Let's go. And make tax season feel like it's award season with easy filing. Yeah! Know that you're backed by the leading tax preparer, TurboTax, and we'll show you all your filing options up front so there are no surprises. Feel accomplished and confident that your taxes are done right. File an Intuit Credit Karma today. Ah, yeah. Expert help not available with all products. Guarantee details available at turbotax.com/guarantee.
Join Rob Pratt every Sunday at 11 a.m. for Black and Gold Sunday presented by Coons Market, your hometown Pittsburgh grocer. Rob keeps you posted on Pittsburgh sports with 2 hours of exciting talk. That's Black and Gold Sunday, 11 to 1, presented each week by Coons Market.
It's the KDKA Radio Allegheny Health Network Sports Medicine High School Basketball Game of the Week. We bring you the best players, the best sounds of the game, and the best matchups in the WPIAL. Saturday at 1, Oakland Catholic plays host to North Catholic in a girls' shootout. Presented by Parmar Stores. Brought to you by Run the Show. Premier Basketball Training. Noble Environmental. Specialty Recycling. Only on 100.1 FM and AM 1020. KDKA.
From the Aetna Medicare Solutions Studios.
Proud to be the voice of Pittsburgh. 100.1 FM and AM 1020. KDKA.
CBS News Brief. Taylor Swift just won her first Grammy of the night for Best Pop Vocal Album, and SZA got emotional earlier after picking up her third for Best R&B Song.
I'm sorry. I'm just really over.
Dana Cortez is backstage.
Thank you so much. I promise you to give you my best always.
Maluma and Christina Aguilera took the stage to present the award for Best Música Urbana Album, and the Grammy went to Karol G for her project Mañana Será Bonito.
Miley Cyrus and Lainey Wilson also snagged Grammys. Across California tonight, people are doing their best to unblock drains in their neighborhoods ahead of torrential rains, floods, and possible mudslides. And in the Middle East, a U.S. bombing campaign against Iranian-backed targets in Iraq, Syria, and Yemen continues. It's retaliation for the deadly drone strike in Jordan that killed 3 American service members. CBS News Brief, I'm Monica Ricks.
When you're still looking for love, Valentine's Day sucks. Every restaurant is fully booked. Suddenly, all chocolates are heart-shaped, and all the PDA. Thankfully, California Psychics can give you the guidance you need to find the one. We guarantee if your reading isn't life-changing, it's free. And new customers receive 20 minutes for just $20. Visit CaliforniaPsychics.com and experience the joy of certainty. California Psychics.
The KDKA AccuWeather forecast is brought to you by JP Roofing and Siding, Pittsburgh's #1 Platinum Preferred Roofing Replacement Contractor. Call 412-829-7711.
Quite mild for this afternoon with a good deal of sunshine, high of 53. Then clear skies for tonight, chilly low of 28. Cooler for tomorrow despite a good deal of sunshine, high of 46. And a good deal of sunshine Tuesday, high of 47. For AccuWeather, I'm meteorologist Matt Benz, 100.1 FM and AM 1020 KDKA.
Welcome back to Amplify, where our guest is Tara McDaniel, who's written a book titled Hopeful Lament, Tending Our Grief Through Spiritual Practices. During the first hour, we were talking about what we meant by it. She writes that lament is carrying our questions and complaints before the Spirit of God. It is expressing pain in an embodied way where it doesn't turn into violence directed at ourselves or anyone else. There's no question it's something many of us have to learn how to do. It doesn't come naturally to most of us. But the alternative is to bury our grief or anguish so that it becomes toxic to ourselves and those who are around us. So, Tara, what would you say to those who believe that everything happens for a reason?
Well, I would say that there is a sense in which that is true. There is a sense, in which, the Romans 8, God works everything together for good. Those kinds of things, they're truth. But what happens is that they can get overused or oversimplified, especially when directed at people who are in the throes of grief and who need lament, and those kinds of bypassing statements can end up hurting the people they're intended to encourage. And I think oftentimes the people who say them are often well-intentioned. They're wanting to offer comfort. They're wanting to be compassionate. And it's also true that it makes them feel a little bit better, like they've got an answer. They've sort of tied things up with a bow. And as we know, grief and loss can't be tied up with a neat and tidy bow. Doesn't work that way.
Right. You write that lament is a crucial part of the antidote for despair and bitterness, and if we're going to survive and move forward in healthier, freer ways, we must lament. And
that's right.
And then you, as I talked to you beforehand, you have at the end of each paragraph, you have a way in which you believe we can be helped. And this one is breath prayer practice. Tell us a little bit about this as a way of explaining that there's something like this at the end of each chapter.
Yes, exactly. So every chapter ends with something to do, a way to pray your grief. And breath prayers are one of my favorites for a host of reasons. But most importantly, it's probably the simplest. It's literally as near as your breath, something that all of us, Lord willing, do automatically if we're in health. And the way a breath prayer works is that it's a way of as you breathe in, you focus on a phrase, and as you breathe out, you focus on another phrase. So, for example, it might be a name of God. You might breathe in Yah, and you might breathe out Way. Or you might breathe in Abba, and you might breathe in be with me now. A prayer that I love engaging myself and inviting others to in times of loss is breathing in, here I am, breathing out, healer, meet me here. And the idea with breath prayers is the words that I'm saying, you're whispering silently in your mind as you breathe, or you can whisper them, audibly as well. And it's a way to, again, to return to that, to that foundation of life. It's a way to connect with the Spirit, who is, among other things, referred to as breath or wind. And it's a way to, it's something that can be done in all kinds of places. So the thing about grief is that it happens on its own schedule. It can't be sort of controlled in that way. And so for anyone who is holding grief over time, a breath prayer is something that when a wave of sadness happens in the grocery store, or when you're at work, or when you're walking down the street or driving in traffic, it's something that you can do wherever you are. And the other thing that I love about breath prayers is that there are times, and I have certainly been there many times in life, in which the words to talk to God about my questions and my grief, they're hard to come by because I feel so overwhelmed. And so that is when a breath prayer can be, it doesn't require a lot of wordy discussion. It's simply letting breath be prayer.
And so the other chapters deal with tearing practice. It's how just tearing something, clothes, whatever, psalm writing practice, tear jar practice, Terra Divina, has nothing to do with her first name practice, grounding practice, mandala practice, or mandala, worry-free practice, and collage practice. The second chapter is titled How Grieving Got Lost, and uses as an example the biblical story of Lazarus. What can we learn from that story? You explained basically that Jesus didn't try to solve their grief.
That's right. Yeah, that story has a lot of depth for a whole host of reasons, but with respect to grief and to lament, what I find really compelling is that we know that Jesus was planning to heal Lazarus. We know that he waited to return so that Lazarus would in fact be dead, and so that the miracle that was about to take place would be all the more unmistakable. And when he arrived, he didn't rush past the weight of sadness experienced by those who had lost Lazarus. So he engages questions. And most importantly for me is that he cries with them as they are crying for Lazarus. He cries with them, knowing what he's about to do. He doesn't say it's going to be fine. Just wait for the resurrection. It's coming. Hold on. Why are you even crying? You know that Lazarus is in a better place. Nothing like that. Jesus cries with them.
And
yeah.
And so you point out, writing about how grieving got lost, and instead of entering the hard and necessary work of lament, many people resist grief and channel it often in anger or the pursuit of retribution, but you would prefer to describe it as a process in which lament is not only praise and trust, but also a type of prayer that honors God, humans, and reality.
That's right. Yeah, I think that lament is, at its core, lament is truth-telling. And lament cares about justice. Lament cares about life and alleviating suffering. And in that way, it's a gift.
Mm-hmm. But what can happen when grief is suppressed?
When grief is suppressed, it does violence. Grief harms when it is suppressed. And that can look like, that can be in an individual life. It can be in a family. It can happen over generations. Grief suppressed becomes, a metaphorical cancer, and does all kinds of harm, and is not what we're invited to. And we see this even generationally, that when grief is suppressed, either by the choice of individuals or by the enforcement, of the powers that be, it keeps living in insidious ways. It comes out sideways, so to speak. And lament is one of the ways that is the key way, among others, that grief is metabolized. It's processed. It's sort of digested, so to speak, so that it doesn't keep being reborn.
You write about how history, we talked about, have led us up to this moment. A lot of the things that happened have, you say, made it difficult to maintain the idea of a world getting steadily better. We were inundated with new reasons to grieve, including unprecedented violence on U.S. soil. Well, there's a lot of things happening this very moment, right? As we do this interview.
That's right.
And,
That's right.
And you write that instead of entering the hard and necessary work of lament, many resisted grief, and that's probably still happening today. It was often channeled into anger or the pursuit of retribution, because those things fit with American values like capability, optimism, and proactivity. For some, it all inspired a scarcity mindset and a search for scapegoats, immigrants, millennials, terrorists, and opponents. Political parties are all groups held responsible for the sorry state of things. And you could be writing this for what's going on in the world today, couldn't you?
I sadly, yes. Yes. And what I have seen to be true and what I believe to be true about genuine lament, as opposed to bitterness, rage, desire, scapegoating, all these kinds of things, which I wrote about several years ago and are still happening today, is, lament, it cares about justice, not just for ourselves. Lament can actually shift the need to point fingers and find people to blame, and it can actually give room for compassion, for those who are suffering, for those who are unlike us, for those who, and frankly as well, for those who are invited to confess, for wrongdoers as well, to lament on behalf of wrongdoers, as well as those who are wrongly scapegoated, as well as those who are oppressed, as well as those who are victims of violence. Lament can shift it from being about us versus them to being about all of us in this together.
And you write about how we've made the mistake of allowing praise to replace lament And that's why we're being invited to weep with those who weep, again, from the book of Romans. Weep with those who weep instead of pressing them to reaffirm their faith quickly and cheerfully. And when I introduce you, you're a spiritual director for adults and children. How is spiritual direction a part of this? You indicate it's not coaching or counseling, but contemplative listening to help another tune into the holy and their own truest self. And you can do that as a spiritual director, trained and quite familiar, but we can do that to some degree ourselves, can't we?
Absolutely. Spiritual direction can be a gift, to have another person sort of listen with you to the movements of your soul and to the invitations of God in your life. But that's only one way to explore those things of many, and every single person has the ability to look within and to be in conversation with God about all the fullness of what's happening in their lives. And that's the beautiful thing. And we get to do that in families and communities and church groups as well.
And we need to bring God into this also. You write about how God comforts us when we're in pain, so that we can be a source of consolation for others who are suffering.
Yes, exactly. Yes. There's no question that God draws near to the brokenhearted. I have experienced it. I know you have as well. And I know many of you who are listening know very intimately what I'm talking about. And sometimes when suffering is bleak, God can for a time seem to be silent. And so, part of this work of lament is trusting and hoping, and watching for those moments when God does draw near, when in a way that I think each person knows, can discern for themselves what God's presence looks and feels like for them and how it shows up for them. And I think it's different, for most of us. It's sort of this unique language that God is kind enough to engage with each soul created in God's image. And in those moments when God seems quiet, and those exist, that is when we breathe. That is when we don't stay in these places alone. We invite other people, as other trustworthy people, into the conversation with us, and into that holy truth-telling work.
Right, as you write, it's essential to have the courage to allow yourself to be changed by loss. It honors the love implicit in it. Rediscovering the practice of lament together can unlock ways to let ourselves fully experience grief as it is in an unhurried and intuitive pace. So,
yes.
God comforts us, as we've said, when we are in pain, so that we can be a source of consolation for others. Say something about, I at least want to do one more practice, maybe because I know you did it, and I know I've seen it happen. Tell us about the tearing practice.
Yes. So the tearing practice is, I find people connect with it profoundly. I certainly have and do. And it's if it sounds familiar, it's because it is. The Bible and ancient cultures are full of examples of this. That was that was one way that lament was expressed, that grief was expressed. Rending garments, sprinkling ashes in hair, that kind of thing. In the story of Job that we've talked about, Job, that's when he loses everything. What he does is he gets up and he tears his garments. That's what David does when his soul friend dies. It's what his daughter Tamar does when she's betrayed and assaulted. And so, that idea of tearing garments is ancient, and so for us, there can be something really visceral, and again, we've talked about lament as truth telling. Tearing as a lament practice is truth telling, because as you tear the cloth or the paper, there's a sound, and you get to see with your eyes, brokenness and either frayed edges or frayed threads that bear witness to the brokenness of loss and of grief. And it can be a really powerful way of, again, metabolizing, processing, expressing grief. And I will say about the tearing practice, I've invited groups to engage that kind of practice many times, particularly since the start of the pandemic. And what I notice and hear from people is that it's a powerful experience, that they sense their own grief coming up in ways that surprise them. I often hear that as people are tearing, the thing that was at front of mind that they were grieving, they'll begin to think of other griefs and other losses that they didn't intend to sort of focus on, but they come up in an organic, natural way. And so it can be a very powerful healing thing.
Yeah, and you do it. You do it for children. Film breaking in because we need to take a break in just 6 seconds. But it's something for children. So let's touch about what children can do as we take this break.
Yeah. So children can engage.
Mobile News Fleet is driven by Jim Shorkey Kia, North Huntington, Wexford, and Uniontown. Visit ShorkeyKia.com today.
Honey, I found the perfect place for my parents and us.
Where?
St. Barnabas. For us, the Woodlands Carriage Home Community. And for my parents, condominium-style living at the Village. My folks will love the Village. There's an indoor mall with shops, restaurants, and more. And we can relax, knowing they're safe and secure.
That's what I plan to do when we move to St. Barnabas. Relax.
Call 724-444-5568 or visit stbarnabascommunities.com.
Folks, my friends at NASCO are working full-time year-round. Love this. Get a free estimate now from NASCO Roofing. Pittsburgh passionate, Owens Corning, platinum contractor. They got great teams. They use the best material, the best roof you can buy. Lifetime warranty on materials and labor. Call NASCO 412-373-2000. 412-373-2000. NASCO Roofing. NASCO. NASCO roofs stand above the rest.
We all hear the radio ads about the IRS. They tell you to be afraid, to be scared, and they try to frighten you into calling. I'm not here to do that. Tax Relief Advocates is different. TRA is here to tell you that if you owe money to the IRS, whether it's $5,000, $50,000, or $500,000, we have a solution. It doesn't matter if you're sitting in your car, at work, or with your kids. No matter where you are, call now. 800-575-6481. Don't lose hope. TRA can eliminate or reduce what you owe to the IRS. There is zero risk to you. If we can't reduce your tax debt, then you pay nothing. Our passion is taxes and helping individuals fix their IRS
IRS problems. We have a 5-star rating on Google and Yelp and an A+ with the Better Business Bureau. You don't need to be afraid of the IRS any longer. End your tax nightmare today by visiting us online at TRA.com or call 800-575-6481. That's 800-575-6481. Tax Relief Advocates. Real solutions for real people.
Did you miss this week's Allegheny Health Network Medical Frontiers? Log on to the Allegheny Health Network website to listen to your favorite Medical Frontier show. Visit ahn.org/Medical Frontiers podcast and look for your favorite Medical Frontiers show.
SchultzFord.com, 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 SchultzFord.com.
No one should have to face a winter without heat. You can help your neighbors in need stay warm by supporting Dollar Energy Fund during our annual KDKA Radiothon on February 15th from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Presented by MediConnect. All the details at kdkaradio.com. Brought to you by Phil DiLucenti, Levin Furniture, Allegiant Community Federal Credit Union, and Julian Gray Associates. Help us help your neighbor on 100.1 FM and AM 1020 KDKA.
The Village at St. Barnabas, the perfect place for mom.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
My daughter is normally a little goofball. But after a bad night's sleep, she's too tired to be anything. That's why I trust Pure Z's Kids. Pure Z's Kids is mindfully formulated just for kids. Their non-habit forming, drug-free products help my daughter fall asleep naturally, giving her the rest to be her best.
I'm a dinosaur.
Her best dinosaur.
Pure Z's Kids, for ages 4 and up when needed. Explore our products at zquill.com.
These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Tune in this Sunday morning at 8 to the Coons Cooking Hour as Rob Pratt and the Coons Market team talk about mouth-watering snacks and appetizer recipes you can make for the big game. The Coons Cooking Hour, presented by Coons Market, your hometown Pittsburgh grocer. KDKA, covered by Rhino Shield. Looks like paint, but so much better with a 25-year warranty.
Did you know that now you can listen to all your favorite stations, including this one, shows, and even podcasts, all on the Odyssey app? Download it now.
KDKA and KDKA FM HD2 Pittsburgh, W261AX Pittsburgh.
Always live on the free Odyssey app. From the Aetna Medicare Solutions Studios.
Proud to be the voice of Pittsburgh, 100.1 FM and AM 1020. KDKA.
This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by Progressive Insurance.
I'm Monica Ricks. A huge night for women at the Grammys in LA, including Taylor Swift, who just won Best Pop Vocal Album.
This is my 13th Grammy, which is my lucky number. I don't know if I've ever told you that.
And she is not alone.
Miley Cyrus knocked the house down with her performance of Flowers at the Grammys on CBS. Beforehand, Mariah Carey presented the 31-year-old with the first award of the night for Best Pop Solo.
Oh my God, I just got stuck in the rain and traffic and thought I was going to miss this moment. And I could have missed the award, that's fine, but not Mariah Carey. I just saw you at the Hollywood Bowl. It was everything.
It was Cyrus's first ever Grammy win and only her third time performing the song live. Matt Piper, CBS News.
Well, the weather doesn't seem to be affecting the Grammys, but all throughout California tonight, residents are being warned to be ready to evacuate ahead of potential floods and mudslides from more downpours. LA Mayor Karen Bass.
Keep your devices charged and have your emergency supplies and medications on hand. As we anticipate this weather event continuing into the next couple of days,
the governor's issued a state of emergency in at least 8 counties. A state of emergency in Chile, where dozens of forest fires have now killed at least 112 people. It's considered Chile's deadliest fires on record. U.S. airstrikes continue to target Iranian-backed militia groups in the Middle East. Here's CBS's Cristian Benavides.
The U.S. says there are no plans to scale back its response against Iranian-backed militia groups after carrying out a series of airstrikes along with the U.K. over the weekend, targeting the Houthis in Yemen. This followed other airstrikes in Iraq and Syria.
What happened on Friday was the beginning, not the end of our response.
But the U.S. is walking a fine line, careful to avoid hitting any targets inside Iranian territory.
The U.S. stopped at least 4 Houthi missiles today in the Red Sea. And the U.S. Senate unveiled a new bipartisan border bill today. Here's CBS's Nicole Killian.
The $118 billion package would enact new border restrictions as part of a broader national security bill. It would give the administration new emergency authority to expel migrants, streamline asylum proceedings, and end policies like catch and release. The bipartisan compromise was forged after months of negotiations in the Senate. The bill also includes funding for Ukraine, the Indo-Pacific, Israel, and humanitarian assistance in Gaza.
Speaker Mike Johnson says it'll be dead on arrival in the House. This is CBS News.
Sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save nearly $750 on average. Call or click today and find out if we could save you hundreds on your car insurance.
We all make resolutions this time of year, and let's face it, most of them won't stick. But here's one that's not only easy to keep, but will help you feel healthier all year long. Navage. Navage provides quick, drug-free nasal relief by washing saline in one nostril, around the back of the nose, and out of the other nostril. This time of year, when everyone is sick, Navage helps by sucking out germs, bacteria, and viruses trapped in our noses that cause us to feel miserable. And come allergy season, it does the same with dust, pollen, and other allergens. And unlike medications that can take time to help, if they're effective at all, Navage helps treat congestion symptoms in seconds flat, without drugs. This New Year's, resolve to use drug-free Navage to help you breathe easier, sleep better, and feel healthier all year long. Ask for Navage at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Target, or find us online at Navage.com. Navage. N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
Economists expected a recession, but Fed Chair Jerome Powell says the Federal Reserve has been working carefully to bring down record inflation. He was on 60 Minutes tonight with Scott Pelley.
Inflation has been falling steadily for 11 months. Right. You've avoided a recession. Why not cut the rates now?
We want to see more evidence that inflation is moving sustainably down to 2%. We have some confidence in that. Our confidence is rising. We just want some more confidence before we take that very important step of beginning to cut interest rates. We just want to see...
Inflation has fallen from just over 9% to about 3%, near the Fed's ultimate goal of 2%.
Ahead of the Grammys tonight in Los Angeles, police detained Killer Mike. We still don't know details on his charges, but the arrest happened right after the rapper swept the rap categories, winning 3 Grammys. The Grammys, by the way, still on CBS right now. Monica Ricks, CBS News.
Hard work, dedication, and dreams. These are the keystones of success. But easily filing your taxes with TurboTax and Credit Karma doesn't hurt either. And getting your max refund guarantee definitely doesn't hurt. But let others think you did a lot of hard work to file your taxes when in reality, it was a walk in the park. No, you literally filed while walking your dog in the park. Winner! Because some key info is pre-filled for you so you can file quickly and confidently like the boss that you are. So give yourself the peace of mind that comes with getting expert help, because you're going places. Let's go. And make tax season feel like it's award season with easy filing. Yeah! Know that you're backed by the leading tax preparer, TurboTax, and we'll show you all your filing options up front, so there are no surprises. Feel accomplished and confident that your taxes are done right. File an Intuit Credit Karma today. Ah, yeah. Expert help not available with all products. Guarantee details available at TurboTax.com/guarantee.
Progressive presents Precious Moments.
Hey, Jess, want to come for a ride on my motorcycle? You know, we can talk about our feelings and explore our emotional compatibility.
I thought you'd never ask.
The exchange you just heard didn't actually happen, but it could. Bundle your home and other vehicles with Progressive, and you could use the savings to make sure the motorcycle is always ready for your dream girl. So keep the dream alive and the savings coming with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
The KDKA AccuWeather forecast is brought to you by JP Roofing and Siding, Pittsburgh's #1 Platinum Preferred Roofing Replacement Contractor. Call 412-829-7711.
Plenty of sunshine for this afternoon. A mild high of 53 degrees and clear skies for tonight, low of 28. Not nearly as warm for tomorrow, despite a good deal of sunshine, high of 46. Sunshine Tuesday, high 47. For AccuWeather, meteorologist Matt Benz, 100.1 FM and AM 1020, KDKA.
Welcome back to Amplify, second hour, with our guest, Tara McDaniel, who's a spiritual director for adults and children, and also a very beautiful writer. Maybe the book touched me so much because of my own recent losses. You write in the book also, Tara, about children, about helping children. That's not always something we think about, is it?
No, it isn't. Children are often called the forgotten mourners, and I think that's true. It's often believed that because children may not have the emotional language, and certainly the maturity that adults have to stay with and articulate grief, that they don't experience it, that they're not touched in the same way by loss, because they're at a different place developmentally, and that's just not true. And so, acknowledging that the children among us are experiencing this losses along with us, and their own particular losses, big and small, is a way to, I think it can shift something really significant. Mm-hmm. And we can we can appropriately model engaging grief through lament with children, and we can help them bring their own grief into the light by giving them language, to express it, by engaging some of the practices that we talked about. The tearing practice that we were just talking about is a great one for children. They can, like I was saying, they can express their sad and their mad feelings by a tearing practice. And we can help children know that acknowledging grief, that acknowledging sadness and anger isn't. It's a safe thing to do. It's an honest thing to do, and that it's not a permanent state. That when they are sad, they won't be sad always, forever. Mm-hmm. And that's also vital to help them learn and explore over time that emotions ebb and flow, and all of them are good. All of them can be safely expressed.
In the chapter learning to speak to sadness, there is a section that is called crying for help. And let me just read that paragraph for anyone that's happening to tune in during the second hour. What are you talking about? Lament can be words spoken, written, or sung. It can be postures or actions that give expression to pain. Some laments simply and profoundly tell the story of loss and grief. And that is an important starting point. We need to know we are welcome to tell the truth to ourselves, God, and others about pain and anger. We need to share our own stories and to cultivate resilience for hearing the stories of others. Lament is not being negative, depressing, or quote-unquote too much. And when suffering is kept in the dark, the weight of unresolved sorrow remains like a cancer, and harmful secrets are encouraged. What is the power of music in this context?
Yeah, I think we kind of know this intuitively, even if we don't articulate it that way. There's a reason we kind of gravitate to sad songs and sad movies and sad stories at times. And again, it's not because we're sort of naturally melancholy necessarily, or we want to focus on the negative, but there's something about telling stories or hearing resonant stories that tell of similar losses. And in terms of singing, in terms of music, songs of lament are they're found throughout the scripture. Many of them in the Psalms. They're found in the prophets, for example, in the book of Lamentations. And that's what these are. They are songs. They're dirges. They're funeral songs. They're songs of grief that allow a story of loss to be told in a way that, as music does, it takes us from head to a whole different place where we can live and we can live those stories and be lived by those stories alone and together. And so it's a way of as the psalmists often do, of asking why, how long, where are you, God, kind of questions. And it's essential and powerful.
Letting sorrow be a conversation with God. You write that sometimes sorrow whispers and sometimes it shouts. Lament can announce where justice is lacking. Lament is honesty with ourselves and God. Lament is breathing room for God. Our pain, loneliness, and exhaustion all matter to God as much as our joys, dreams, and hope. So say a little bit more about letting sorrow be a conversation with God.
Yeah. Well, I think that when we are in sorrow, we intuitively know something is not right. Something is not as it should be. And so to let that move from simply telling that story into, again, a dialogue with the Holy One. And that trusts that God has room for, that God cares about the things that break our hearts. And I believe God does. And I see, we talked about the story of Lazarus. You see that. You see Jesus weeping with those who are weeping instead of telling them, hey, get it together. Just be happy. I'm about to do something good. And so there's a sense that, and I love how Soong-Chan Rah in his book, Prophetic Lament, talks about how lament, it can be about justice. It can be about engaging God in kind of some messy dialogue and some really raw reflection without rushing to quick answers, without ending on an upbeat, that it can stay in a minor key. So there's so much freedom in those ideas, I think.
And so you're right within the section. Lament is about loss or forgotten love. It is the dream of resurrection. Lament dares to believe God is interested in our pain and loss. It trusts God is moved by suffering. It is engaging grief with confidence that God doesn't turn a blind eye to cruelty, greed, oppression, or deceit. It is practicing the hope that God truly is near to the brokenhearted. Laments aren't a rejection of faith, but an embrace of a faith that loves justice and mercy. It's an invitation to bring our whole selves, families and communities, with all their complexities, into God's loving presence. Lament creates a chance for something new to be born because it acknowledges what is missing. I am convinced it is our best hope for healing the divisions that plague us. So how, as a spiritual director, would you say basically we can make that conversation with God?
I think it can happen in all kinds of ways. Again, some of the practices that I offer can be a beginning, but in the simplest terms, it is acknowledging. It can follow, frankly, the sort of roadmap that's available in the Psalms of beginning with addressing God, saying, "Hey, this God, we're asking for you to listen," and laying out the situation. God, do you see? Do you see? This is what has happened. This is what is happening. This is what should have happened that isn't. God, can you feel with us?
Mm-hmm.
And so moving that into the prayers that we articulate alone, the prayers that we engage, and the conversations that we engage in our families, and what's happening in our churches and our larger culture. I think that this idea of lament as a conversation with God could really shift some of the resistance that churches and communities and people have to kind of deal with and address some of these more systemic things that divide us. Lament is a sort of a sideways in one sense. It's a safer way in that doesn't need to major on enemies and us versus them, but again can return to what about us and what are we asking God? What deliverance is needed? What hope is needed? What help is needed?
So you teach us that lament is a kind of alchemy, slowly transforming love and loss and suffering into hope, renewal, and more love. And you've talked about love, and you write in the section about grief work that is as essential as hope is, it is not the starting point for healing. It can't be, but there is a better way that begins with lament that can be developed together, so that you're right, when disaster happens, returning to the past isn't possible, but finding a new normal is. You can rebuild brick by brick, preserving what can be preserved and using new material where it's needed. You can carry forward the best parts of what or who is lost while also growing and changing where necessary. Hope, lament, and even joy can be held together. It's quite a promise.
It's a big one, isn't it?
Yes.
It's pretty bold and audacious, and I believe it. One of the things that I talk about near the section that you just read is that while I believe hope and joy are possible and to be looked forward to on the other side of loss, they can't be rushed, they can't be forced, and sometimes Sometimes it can be a slow unfolding. It's so slow that it may feel like hope, joy, trust, will never return. And so trusting, these are things that happen over time. And so, that the thing that we haven't talked about is the need to cultivate patience and endurance, and resilience, to stay with whatever it is that is authentically happening in us and our families. And so if that's grief, we stay with the grief and we tap into hope as we can. If grief has been processed, and the loss is less fresh, we can stay with hope and trust and tap into lament as we need to in sips. And so it's kind of this rhythm that requires patience, that requires trust.
In the chapter Trauma and the Courage to Lament, you write that one of your significant steps was in starting to allow yourself to be a human being instead of eternally doing. Take more walks outside and taking more naps. Then you talk about what the brain's doing this condition, that we should talk about our pain with others, listen to our body, and let our soul speak. And you write, the action my grief required was stillness. I needed to rest and heal. I needed to stop holding together the shattered pieces of my life and let the shards fall to the ground. Only then would it be possible to start picking up the pieces. God was often silent in those days, and yet I can now see the Spirit was also in the silence. We forget that God is often in the silence, don't we?
That's right. That's right. We do forget that, and it's because it may feel, we may feel so profoundly alone, even if we aren't, in fact. And that again is that idea of cultivating patience and the ability to wait and not demand answers in the short term or demand a resolution in the short term. I remember being so, when my family and I experienced this series of losses, I felt very betrayed by God, frankly, and I was frantic to sort of solve it. And so I was rushing around talking to anyone who would talk to me, and mentors and therapists and pastors, because I thought I could find a solution. I thought there was some sort of magic wand that I just hadn't a verse or a way of praying or something like that I hadn't discovered yet. And my spiritual director at the time said, slow down and just stop. And that, for me, and I think for many, was essential for anything, any growth or any healing that could come. That stopping and that trusting and that really just reconnecting with me being a human with a physical body. I was exhausted by that time holistically, because the reality is grief is exhausting. It's hard work, and so that pause, that Sabbath, that rest was part of the equation.
Right, body, mind, and spirit. Our minds, bodies, and spirits are wonderfully interconnected. Neuroscience sheds light on how painful events get processed, leading to more mental, physical, and spiritual health. It starts with recognizing that our brains have three distinct yet unified parts. Like the Trinity, maybe that's another glimpse of ways we are made in the image of God. And in Cultivating Safety, you write, the good news is that the brain is wonderfully resilient. The distress of unhelpful connections in our brains can be undone and new patterns formed. More capacity for addressing our griefs and losses can be cultivated. In pain or stress, we have less capability and naturally get overwhelmed faster. The solution is not to push harder, which only prolongs difficulty. Rather, it is to give your body and soul breathing